yoga teacher. Okay, some of it may be in your book and some of it will be new for you. So starting with our role, we want to be thinking of what are the objectives of a yoga teacher. What do we want to be sharing? So, of course, from our side, we're going to be promoting yoga as a lifestyle. Now, in a lot of countries, yoga is known as a form of exercise. Not everyone knows that there's much, much more to the yoga practice. So it's up to us to share the real knowledge of yoga. So to explain that there's so much more than just doing some asanas for some weight loss or something like that. So you have to decide how much knowledge you want to show, how much you want to share with the world. So you can, of course, explain many, many aspects of yoga which are part of a lifestyle, which you can teach in your class. Okay? You don't have to limit yourself only to one aspect of yoga. We want to bring meaning and purpose to yoga practice so that our students that come understand why they're practicing. I remember one girl said to me in one of the lectures, she said, why we're telling them about the benefits and the precautions, we don't learn about that in our regular class. And I said, but don't you want to know why you're practicing in the first place? Like, why you want to just copy what the teacher is saying and just follow like a sheep? Understand how yoga can be helpful for you, and then you'll understand what positions are going to be helpful for certain types of people. If you're having a certain problem, you can practice certain poses a little bit more. You want to know why you're going to practice to start with. So I gave her the example of one of my old teachers. More than 20 years ago, she started teaching me, and I was young then. Of course, I didn't have any kind of problems, and she always used to say, okay, we're doing this pose because it helps with this, this, and this. And I would say, okay, good, I don't have these problems. But still, all that knowledge went in to my mind, so that later on I could also share it with those people that actually needed it. So it's always good to keep sharing that knowledge, and it's also going to motivate them to keep practicing. Otherwise, they'll think, okay, this is one option. I could go to my yoga class for 1 hour a week, and then another hour I will do some running, or another hour I'll do some cycling. They won't understand how much depth is there in the practice that they're doing. So we want them to understand why, and we want them to become regular with their practice. Okay, then strengthening and balancing this body-mind relationship, this connection. This is the main focus of yoga, the reason we practice. Also, we want to increase the willpower, increase their focus. I mean, these are just benefits, side benefits of practicing of yoga. Increasing awareness of the thoughts, emotions, and body. This is one of the main focuses of yoga practice. And pretty much we want to be able to increase their awareness in everything that they're doing. So yes, the practice of asana when you're teaching them a class, also having that awareness when they're eating, when they're having a shower, when they're interacting with other people. We want them to understand what's going on and to be able to observe their mind, observe their thoughts, their emotions, with everything that they're doing. That is the practice of yoga. So the relationship that we want to have with our students is not one like, yes, I'm the teacher and you're the student. It shouldn't be like this. Of course, in India, the relationship of the guru-disciple is very strong, but the yoga practices were different. It's not like teaching of asanas. That doesn't make you a guru. And someone who is considered to be a guru is, of course, a much, much higher level than any of us. Someone who has overcome their ego, their desires, their fears, everything is gone. Then they're considered guru. And then, of course, if they call themselves a guru, they're definitely not a guru. No? Right? So here, we're not thinking like, yes, I'm someone big, I'm a guru, and you're my disciple. We shouldn't be thinking like that. And of course, this guru-disciple relationship is something different. It's just one-on-one. It's not like, here's the guru, and then here's all the people that I'm teaching. It's a close bond that they are having. So for us, it's more of a friend's role, sharing the knowledge that we have with somebody else. We're all going in that direction, that same direction. We have different pathways. some of us very much on one way, some another way, some a little further along, some a little further back, but we're all kind of going towards that direction of evolving our mind and going towards, hopefully, towards samadhi, enlightenment, whatever you like to call it. But that's also where we have to remember, if we're the teacher, it doesn't matter. The student might be further along that path than us. Okay? We can't think that just because we're the teacher that we're something higher. Never, we should think like that. So we're just giving them some direction, and we're just sharing the knowledge that we have. Okay? Next point, acceptance and understanding of himself, acceptance of the student, what their limitations are, what their problems are, is also very important to us as a teacher. We can't force our students to be a certain way. We can only encourage them towards that right direction, and we have to give them the guidance that is necessary for them at that time. We should have awareness of the students' cultural feelings. Now here, some of this lecture is combining a little bit with the corrections and alignment, which we're going to be doing next time. But this is something to think about as a teacher, how our student is feeling. Now, we have to think about this a lot because we're with you guys, you're coming from all different cultures, and some countries that you're from are also having very mixed cultures. So we need to understand, some people are very comfortable to do certain things, some are not so much. Like for some of you, chanting will feel very comfortable. For others, you'll feel chanting is not very comfortable. For some, looking on the side of corrections, you'll feel very comfortable to have someone correct you, physically correct. For others, you won't. Okay, so we have to understand what's suitable for our students. Student able to feel what the student feels when practicing yoga. So having that connection in such a way that one can understand if the student's feeling comfortable, not feeling comfortable, changing things accordingly, discussing with them whatever is needed. Okay. Being aware of when a student can move to more advanced practices. This is also important, and this is many times missed in classes because the teacher just keeps doing the same kind of class over and over. Every time they go to class, they do shoulder stand 30 seconds, or they do forward bend 30 seconds, or cobra for 10 seconds, every time. So they never actually advance in the practice. A friend of mine, she came here and she used to do Trikonasana triangle. And she always had a prop, like one of these blocks. And she said to me, yes, I'm very good at triangle pose. And then she got out a block, put her hand down to come into triangle pose. And I said, have you tried without the block? And she hadn't. She had been having the block for years and never had one of the teachers said, why don't you just try without it now? You know, it doesn't matter. If she couldn't do it, no problem. But she should at least try, fingers on the ground, advancing in her practice. She shouldn't be so dependent on the prop after so many years. Of course, if she had some major health problems and, you know, if she tried it and it didn't work, okay. But then it was the teacher's responsibility to encourage her to go a little bit further, to go a bit deeper. Here, people do shoulder stand. They do it for years and years, but they've never done it for more than a minute, right? So here we want to encourage our students to be maintaining poses for a little bit longer, for doing some poses that they might not feel 100% comfortable with, because what happens is the teacher just does the poses everyone likes. You know the telephone pose? The ear, foot to the ear? You don't all like it, right? It's difficult, right? For most of you. So many people would not teach that because they don't like it or they think the students won't like it. But it's very good for the hips. And you can do variations of it. You can practice many variations, just holding the foot with the hands and lifting up. And then when they can do that comfortably, start doing the full position. You know, so those things we want to keep in our class. We don't want to just keep the ones that everyone feels happy with, feels good with. We need to give them variation, and we need them to go deeper. Okay, then talking to the students, understanding what they need from the practice. Why are they coming to the class? How can you help them more? Are they coming because they have back pain? If they're coming because of that, then you can give them so many practices that will help. You may put them into the class, or you might plan to put them in the class the next week. You might give them a handout on practices that can help them. Try to help them as much as you can. And if they're coming for back pain and you go and give them all these practices, they're going to be really happy. And they're also going to tell all their friends. So it's always good if you can do what they're requiring as well. So if we're going to be teaching yoga as a lifestyle, asana is one. Okay. Everyone knows about asanas. Of course, there are many different levels of asanas. Many times they're only practiced on a superficial level. Now we know that we can go so much deeper with those practices as well. Okay. Pranayama, not very common. Okay. People may practice 5 minutes at the end, a little bit of deep breathing, a little bit anulom vilom, a little bit of Brahmari sometimes, but there's not much there. One of the main reasons, people can't sit. Second, they can't focus. They want to do meditation. Everyone wants to do meditation, yet they can't sit and close their eyes. So pranayama is this stepping stone towards meditation. And it's not like you're going to start your classes and teach like 20 minutes of pranayama. Everyone will run away. What you need to do is start with a few minutes, start encouraging them, getting them to close their eyes, reminding them why this is going to be helpful for them, explaining how this will help them to start decreasing the thoughts that are in their mind, and then slowly lead them towards meditation. Okay. And then they'll enjoy it. It happens many times here, people don't want to do it and we increase it, and then they end up enjoying pranayama more than anything else because they really feel that peace inside when they're doing it. But it takes practice. Just getting people to close their eyes can be a big struggle, because they keep thinking, what else is going on? What's the person doing next to me? Are they closing their eyes? Are they doing the breathing? Oh, I heard this noise, or something like this. So they keep opening. Sometimes it's just because they don't want to look inside. Many of us are scared to search inside what's going on. You might have had that experience the other day when you did Silent Day. It can be hard. So we've got pranayama, then we've got meditation. So practice of meditation, there's many different forms. We're going to be going through lots of different practices with you as well. And if you've started doing pranayama with your students, then doing a little bit of meditation after the pranayama will come much more naturally and easily for them. You may teach the yamas and niyamas. You haven't had that lecture yet, I don't think. In the next.
On the yamas.
Huh?
On the yamas.
Oh, you've had on the yamas. Okay. So you have the niyamas as well. So here you can also incorporate them. You might discuss about one yama each week. Have a discussion with your students. Ask them to try and apply it in their life. And then the next week, discuss a little bit more. Start talking about the next yama. Many of our students do this. It's nice. Give them something else. You may have discussions about diet and lifestyle. So here this might be in a regular class that you're teaching, or it might be in a workshop. You might do a Saturday morning workshop for a couple of hours, and then you can add so many more things. Okay? So diet may be part of it, or lifestyle, yogic routine, you might start talking more about. But don't go and say to the meat eater, okay, you have to be a vegetarian now if you want to practice yoga. Because most people will run away. We know the majority of people are not vegetarian. Of course, we can always encourage them. We can give them many ideas on why it would be helpful for them, especially if they want to go into the higher practices of yoga. But we can't tell them, no, stop eating meat, then come. They won't come back. And then we have things like the mantras and the yajna. So mantras, you may include in your classes. You might include them in some classes, but not all, depending where you're teaching. Example, you're teaching in a gym, might not be the right place to have mantras. But if you're teaching in another place, you might include some. I remember there was one student, he did TTC and he said, oh, Kate, I can't teach these mantras back home. No one's going to want these mantras. And then he went back and he started with Om. And then he started adding more. The students liked it, just little at a time, slowly building up. And then he ended up doing all the mantras that we're doing here. And his students loved it. And now he always has mantras in all of his classes. And it might be like you guys. You might have come here, you thought, what is this? Chanting this mantra, and is this like some religious thing? And starting to get worried, like, what are we doing here? But then once you start doing the chanting, start feeling the vibrations, feeling that calmness, then one wants to do a little more. So it's quite addictive in that way, the mantras. So it's good to give some backup as well about the effects of mantras. There's even lots of different research now which is proving the effectiveness of different types of mantras, especially on scientific research is there. So you can also give that to them so that they can understand a little bit more. So you might involve some mantras in your classes. You might do havan, small yagyas, like we're doing here. Many of our teachers do them back home. They do them like once a week or once a month, and then they encourage other people around, their students, other yoga teachers. It's like bringing the yoga community together to do a havan once in a month, maybe some bhajans or some nice yogic food. It's enjoyable. We can give you a little booklet about havan, how to conduct havan. Even, of course, in the havan in the evenings, you can look and you can see, you can ask whoever is doing it to show you how to do it. There's different options. Now here we do with kalpu, the havan, but you can also use different types of wood to conduct a havan. So there's a lot of options there for introducing havans. And many people like it. Sometimes I'm surprised also when I'm teaching in Australia and I conduct a havan and I just say randomly to people, you can come. And I don't expect them to come. And they come and afterwards they say, oh, wow, okay, that was something really special they hadn't experienced before. So it will be the same with you. You might start teaching some Karma Yoga or encouraging them to go on Karma Yoga trips, whether it's sharing of yoga to certain types of people, or maybe it's not related to yoga at all. Maybe it's things like, cleaning up an area of your town or your village or somewhere, doing something for the community, some kind of community help. And then we have Bhakti Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga, of course, there's lots of definitions of that. Kanda's going to discuss that in the afternoon. But generally known as yoga of devotion, or many times one thinks of Bhakti with connecting of nature. So there's lots of different ways that we can connect with nature, whether we're just going for a walk in nature, whether we're sitting and meditating in nature. Traditional way of thinking of Bhakti Yoga many times is bhajans, kirtans, and songs for connecting again with that higher energy. So you can also incorporate different forms of Bhakti into your classes. So here when we're looking more specifically with asana and pranayama, so increasing awareness of the body and mind. Okay, we've got strengthening the relationship between the two, disciplining, and then of course that lovely side effect of yoga, physical and mental health. Okay, that's the main one that most people are coming for, is for health. So when we're teaching asanas, the first point is to prevent any kind of injury. Naganda's been discussing about injury prevention. It's very essential, even to keep, of course, your students happy, and also to prevent any kind of problems that may occur if someone has injured themselves. Okay. Moving from simple to advanced poses is also important. We've been discussing it. Always making sure that they are improving in their practice. They're not just sticking with the simple things. Not having a competitive environment is also important. Now you would have heard of, some of you would have heard of yoga competitions, right? In India they're very common. Everyone else says, what do you mean yoga competitions? Yoga's not supposed to be a competition. But actually many times there are yoga competitions in India, and the reason is to attract the younger people. No problem there in Western countries, because it's the young ones that many times are going to yoga. But especially in India, it's commonly thought of that the older people will practice yoga many times. It's like people say, oh, I'll do all these other things, and when I finish all of that, then I'll focus on yoga. So to bring more young people into the yoga field, those competitions are there. But we're not going to be wanting to do competitions because we don't want a competitive environment in our class. So we can remind our students that they're practicing for themselves, that they're not practicing to compare themselves with anybody else. And the common example we give, we're trying to connect our body and mind. We're not trying to connect our mind with the person next to us, their body. No? If we're looking at their body and we're comparing, then we're not practicing yoga. We're just focusing on them. We're not understanding what's going on with our own body. So we want to try and encourage our students to practice as if they're the only one in the room. Okay? That is the better thing. It can be difficult, especially if you've got a classroom with mirrors, because they keep looking at themselves, then they keep looking at other people. If you can put up some kind of cloth, better, because that's not what it's about. No, this way that yoga is changing to be all about this perfect body, and only those people are practicing, and every asana has to be perfect. It's all nonsense. Okay, we want to be encouraging everyone to practice. Doesn't matter what they look like, doesn't matter what their body shape is, doesn't matter how flexible they are. Okay. Next, practicing as per their capacity. So they're doing what they can do. You can guide them, you can encourage them to go deeper, but some days, some students are just not ready. It's like if something's happened for them, maybe on the emotional side, then some things they don't want to do, they don't feel comfortable in doing. Sometimes you might notice it. You're teaching a class and one person goes to the toilet at a certain time in the class every time. Like when you're doing a certain asana. Maybe some of you have done that. Sometimes we're teaching an asana that you don't like, so you conveniently need to go to the toilet. It happens. So we want to notice that as the teacher and then discuss with them, why are you not practicing that pose? Is it because you feel uncomfortable in it? Is it because it's difficult? Is it because it's creating pain? Do you need a variation? You know, this type of thing we need to discuss with them to make sure that they're going to be comfortable to do everything. Okay? And it might just be a one-off. It might just be, no, I just can't deal with doing that pose today. Okay? Some of the different asanas, they bring up different emotions too. You know? Some of these asanas can bring up some of their fears that they might be having. So sometimes we do certain asanas for certain things. Like if someone's very introverted, doing a back bend to open them up. If they're very extroverted, folding them forward bends, so they have to look inside. So sometimes people are not ready for that. And we don't want to push them. We can gently encourage. Okay. Next, the ideal pose and the expectations. So sometimes what happens is the teacher has this idea, everyone has to do cobra pose. I want everyone to have their arms straight. I want everyone to have their shoulders relaxed. I want everyone's curve to be just like this. But it's not going to happen because everyone is different. We have different areas of flexibility. We have different areas of tightness. We have different body shapes. Like some of us have very long arms compared to our torso or our legs. So it will always look different. If we all do cobra pose, some of you will feel it in your wrist. Some of you will feel it in your shoulders. Some of you will feel it in your back. Some of you will feel it in your neck. So it's all going to be different. So we can't put the asanas in a box and say it has to be like this. This is where the problems occur and this is where injuries occur. Okay, so we have to be flexible with how the position is, as long as we understand how to do it in a correct way without damaging oneself and realizing what are the important alignment principles of each of the asanas, then it's going to be okay. So here we're not going to try to push our students to do what we consider to be the ideal pose. We get them to do the position to get as much benefit from it as possible in whatever way is needed. Okay? So we're not encouraging our students to push, and we're definitely not going to be pushing our students to do it either. Next, reminding our students that the practice of yoga is very personal. You know, back hundreds of years, thousands of years, there were not classes of 30 people or 100 people in a class. It was not like that. It was just one-on-one the practice that they had was very, very introverted, very meditative practice. It wasn't something that they just went and discussed randomly with everybody. Okay, so of course you can't make the practice completely introverted in a big class of lots of people, but you can encourage that as much as possible. So you can remind them that it is personal. You can also try to encourage them to have their own self-practice, because that self-practice is going to be much more introverting than coming to a class. Next, having awareness yourself as a teacher of what you're saying to your students, of how you're guiding them, and then having that awareness of how your students are. And we'll talk more about that. Here we want to be encouraging our students. As I've said, we're encouraging them to advance all the time. Reminding them, example, they've been doing triangle pose. They've been holding it for 10 seconds. So you're building them up to hold it for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 1 minute. You can say to them, wow, look, now you can hold this position for 1 minute, whereas a month ago, you could only hold it for 10 seconds. Isn't that a good improvement? You know, you can remind them things like that, because otherwise they don't always realize. They just think that it's all the same, but actually maintaining a pose is improving a lot. Okay, it's not only about how flexible they are, and of course I've told you flexibility is not yoga, but it's also about holding the pose for longer periods of time, so that they can relax in them more, so that they can have a much more deeper meditative effect than just working on the musculoskeletal system. The next thing to think about is individual practice. Can they do it alone? Okay, we want to be teaching our students in such a way that eventually they can do all their practices by themselves. It doesn't sound very good business-wise, okay, because they might not need to come to you as much, but we want to encourage them to practice all the time. Now there's this popular thing of calling each other yogis. I go and I do my 2-hour practice once a week, I'm a yogi. No, that's not a yogi. Okay. Someone who is practicing, who has yoga as part of their lifestyle, that is a yogi. Okay? And we want to encourage our students to do as much practice as they can, not only when they have to come and pay $20 for a class. And most people cannot practice every day. Like, they cannot come to a class every day. It's going to be hard for most people to afford that type of thing. So we want them to be able to do their practice, and we want them to be able to do it safely. And they'll still keep coming, because they'll want to come to you, they'll want to keep learning new things from you, and they'll respect you for the knowledge that you shared with them. What's this thing? Okay, then about corrections. We'll go into detail about in the next lecture, but a little bit about corrections we want to think about is that we want to correct them so that they have more awareness and they can practice themselves. If we have to keep correcting them every time they come, then we're doing something wrong. We're not teaching them in a way that they understand how to do the pose by themselves. So we want to teach them so that they can do the pose correctly, they can do the pose at home without making any kind of mistakes. Okay? If they're always having the corrections, then they obviously don't understand how to do the position. Okay? And they also can become very dependent. Some students are like this. They don't know the position until someone demonstrates it. Then they understand what the pose is. We don't want them to be like that. We want them to understand the names. We want them to understand how to come into the position without having to watch the teacher. Okay? This is all things, and we've been encouraging you for that. Now you've started micro lessons, right? So with your micro lessons, it's probably been explained that we don't always want you to be doing the pose with them, because if you're always doing the pose, all the students get dependent. They don't understand how to do anything without watching you. And also, you have less flexibility in your teaching. If every time you have to teach a pose or you have to take revision of a pose, you have to go there and show it, it's going to be a problem. You should be able to say, okay everyone, let's get into Saurangasana, shoulder stand pose, and then you can give them the guidelines and they can come into it. They don't need to see you do it again. You know? And that means that you have the flexibility to go around the class You can make any corrections that are needed. You can see what's going on with everybody. You might have noticed in some classes the teachers doing every pose with the students. They don't know what's going on. They might be in forward bend. They can't see everybody. You want to be able to observe everyone, all the positions that they're doing, and be able to get up, move around. Sometimes you might go into a position with them, but not all the time. So if you learn in such a way like we're teaching you, to be able to give instructions without doing it yourself, it's a great skill to have. It's harder. Okay? Many teachers find it hard to give instruction. Example, Ardha Matsindrasana, half spinal twist. If you're sitting there and you're doing it yourself, okay, bend the right leg, wrap the left leg around, and you're doing it, it's very easy to give instructions. But if you're not doing it, it's quite hard to start with, because you've got to visualize, okay, bending the right leg, then the left leg, then which arm, it can get quite confusing. But once you have that skill, then you won't lose it. Okay? So we want to build those skills in you as a teacher. It will give you much greater flexibility. You'll be able to correct much easier. And sometimes what happens is teachers just do the asanas because they want to do it themselves, right? You might have seen that. Some teachers get very busy, they don't do a lot of their own personal practice, so they think, I'll fit it into the class, which is not very fair. It's quite selfish. So it might be that everyone's doing Surya Namaskar and you're doing it with them as well. Okay, no problem. Sometimes you can do it. If everyone can do it well, you can do Surya Namaskar with them. But then not every pose you should be doing. Okay, we've got use of props here with a question mark. Again, the reason being is that people can get very dependent on the props. Like I was mentioning about my friend with the block. Sometimes props are very good. If someone has a pain in the knees, then it can be very helpful to reduce the stress being put on the knees. Example, if they're in a sitting position. Okay, things like that. If someone's got back pain, if a woman is pregnant, then different props can be helpful. But many of them are not necessary. Of course, there's different styles of yoga. Now, the style of Iyengar, he has popularized the use of props. He never used to use props. It was only when he himself had an accident and then he couldn't do all the different asanas that he started using props. And then his students liked that, so they continued with that. So he himself, of course, only wanted to use the props until he could actually do the positions again without them. Now, our way of thinking is, okay, if you can't do this position, work on it by doing different asanas so that eventually you can do that pose. Example, you can't use props for Padmasana, but example Padmasana, you want to be able to do Padmasana. Instead of trying to force yourself into the position, start working on the ankles, start working on the knees, start working on the hips, and then eventually you'll be able to do that pose. That's the traditional way of progressing to the more advanced asanas, instead of trying to force yourself into doing that position and maybe needing something else to help you do it. Okay? Do you all understand my point? So sometimes things like blankets might be helpful, under the head or under the bottom, or if you're going to do Yoga Nidra, things like that, then they can be there. But it's not essential to have. I remember looking in one of those yoga magazines, and there was a picture of a girl doing Shavasana. Now, to do Shavasana, she needed cushions behind her knees. She needed something on her lower back. She needed behind her head and neck. She had an eye bag, covering her eyes. She had some bags also on her arms. I don't know what for. And all different things were there. It's so many things. And I thought, wow, just for Shavasana, you need all of this. Now, surely if you were not comfortable in Shavasana, and not everyone is comfortable in Shavasana, but do another pose. Do Makarasana, crocodile, or do Tadagasana, pond pose. Just change it around instead of needing all of these things just to do the pose. It becomes very difficult in the class. So a few things can be helpful. You can also ask them to bring a cushion or bring a towel or bring a blanket. That will make it easier for you. And then if they need it, they can use it. Okay. But they shouldn't keep using the same things forever. Hopefully yoga is going to help them. Then they will need So next, teaching of pranayama. So again, we're moving to simple to advanced practices. As I've mentioned, people teach pranayama or very, very simplified versions of breathing techniques. They just do a couple of minutes at the end. They think, yeah, that's enough. A couple of minutes of pranayama doesn't really do anything, honestly. You need at least 5 to 10 minutes of pranayama to start getting effects. And pranayama is much more powerful than the practice of asanas. Ganda's probably already mentioned that. If you're doing 15 minutes of pranayama, it's equivalent to doing more than 2 hours of practicing of asanas. So it's a very powerful practice, okay? And especially the advanced pranayams that you're going to start learning this week, applying the bandhas, breath retention, and so on. So we're moving from simple to advanced. Again, not having a competitive environment. You might think pranayama's competitive too, really? Yes. For some people say, I can inhale for this long and I can exhale for that long. Who cares? Like, where does it really affect anyone's life? You know, how long you can inhale and exhale for? And probably you can only do it 3 times or 5 times. You know, the whole purpose, you'll see this last point, we're actually encouraging smaller proportions, but being able to do it for a longer period of time. Okay. Yes, you can inhale for 10 and exhale for 20, but you do it for only 1.5 minutes. But then if you inhale for 4 and exhale for 8, you can do it for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. That's better, right? So we encourage more regular practice than just being able to inhale and exhale longer. So here, again, very personal pranayama. I would say more personal than asana, because breath is so closely linked with the mind. If we're feeling very stressed, we breathe very shallow, right? And you think someone comes to the class, they want to do pranayama, or you're teaching pranayama, they can find it very hard sometimes if they're very, very stressed. Of course, it's great for them. It's the best thing for them, but it can take a bit of time getting used to the practice. There's one practice I often teach, which is walking with breathing. I teach it with prenatal, and we do it with kids, we do it in therapy, because many people cannot just sit down and focus on their breath. So teaching, and you can practice this as well, maybe this can be your homework for the day, is going for a walk and breathing. So standing up, taking breaths, like inhale, step, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, with steps. Okay, so that can slow one down. Many times what happens is we have people coming, they have some anxiety or they have tendency to panic attacks, things like that. You can't just say to them, sit down, start doing pranayama. They can't deal with it. So I'll say, okay, see where Shiva is? Start walking around Shiva. Focus on your breath. It gives them something else that they can be paying attention to. Walking plus breath. Okay. And then they'll find that the thoughts go and they relax. So it's very, very personal. Then having awareness of the student's level of practice as well. You can understand how comfortable they are with proportions when you're doing counting in the class and you're just observing their breath. Okay, that's one of the things we do as the teacher while your eyes are closed. is we're checking, are you breathing in your chest? Are you breathing in your abdomen? And sometimes it might be that we're doing inhale for 4 and you see that someone inhales really quickly and then that's it. And then you tell them to exhale for 4 or 6 or 8 and they exhale really quick. So they find it very difficult to do those ratios. So then you need to change them. So that's part of observation as a yoga teacher and changing it accordingly. So the last slide, some other things we want to consider as our role as a yoga teacher. We might be counseling. You might say, what? I'm a yoga teacher, I'm not a counselor. People will come to you. They'll ask you for guidance. I remember one of our teachers, he just finished his teacher training, he started teaching, and he started emailing me. And he's like, hey, people keep asking me all these questions about their life and what to do. And I don't want to answer these questions. I don't know. What am I supposed to do? I said, this is the beginning of your journey as a yoga teacher. You'll start having to answer more and more of these questions and try to help them the best way you can. And of course, if you don't know, guide them towards somebody else. Because people come to yoga for many different reasons. Many of them think that they're coming just because of exercise, but many of them are coming for other reasons. Everyone wants something out of life. We're all searching for our purpose in life. And yoga can give many of the answers to that. Can give all the answers if one looks deep. So they will be asking you many of these things. We want to keep learning as well. Now we're going to talk more about this in our Starting to Teach lecture. But as a yoga teacher, it's not like you learn everything in 1 month and that's it. You'll keep learning for all your life. Guruji still says he's still learning. He's still doing research. And with every class that you take, and here I'm talking about teaching, I'm not talking about being a student there. Every class that you teach, you're going to learn something. And you'll just keep learning and learning and building up with the knowledge that you have from your students. Like here, you guys are here, I don't know what group you are now, maybe 120, something like that, of English teacher training. And every month we learn from you guys. Every single month there's something else that you guys are giving us. So it will be the same for you. Having that trust in your abilities as well, in what you've learned, is very important. And if you have that trust, then others will trust you as well. Okay? Still, at the same time, being truthful and being very open. Sometimes admitting if you don't know something. Okay? You don't know everything. None of us know everything. Sometimes we need to talk to somebody. Sometimes Guruji needs to talk to somebody to find out something. So we have to be open with the knowledge that we have and guide accordingly. Okay? Having that flexibility of our mind. Then wanting to teach. Okay? We shouldn't feel that it's something that we're forced into doing. We should enjoy yoga and enjoy teaching. And if you're enjoying teaching, then people will come more. Because they'll also enjoy that energy that you're sharing with them, that excitement that you have about yoga. Okay. Practicing themselves is also important. As a teacher, we want to keep practicing. Okay. Not only teaching. There, you'll learn more and more as well. Okay. Having a safe environment. On all levels we're talking. So having a safe environment, as in the room is very safe, you know, no one can hurt themselves, hopefully. Unless they go and do something crazy. Then having a safe, nurturing environment for the students on the emotional side as well. Because sometimes they might be very emotional, they might come to the class, lots of stuff is going on for them. They should feel safe in that class, safe to be practicing and feeling comfortable to talk to you as a teacher as well, to be open about their problems. Okay. Then teaching according to the level of our students is also really important. Okay, if we've got a beginner's class, we're not going to teach headstand. Okay, there's no need for that. Okay, we want to teach very simple things, and then we'll gradually increase the types of practices that we teach them. Some teachers want to do that because they just want to show that they can do headstand. Again, who cares? Okay, some teachers are very, very flexible. They can do many different positions. Doesn't mean they're the best teacher in the world. Other teachers are not very flexible, but they can be very, very good at teaching. Okay, so it should be what the students are up to, what their level is. So if they're beginners, teaching the simple things. If they've been practicing yoga for some longer time, then adding some more difficult things. Okay? Whether it's more difficult asanas, or maintaining asanas for a longer period of time, or doing some pranayama, some meditation, some bandhas, some other things. And then this last point, inspiring them by following a more yogic life. Okay? So that they'll also be inspired to continue in that way. You want to be the example, always. I remember there was a lot of controversy with one ad in one of these magazines, and it was an ad for sake, right? This Japanese wine, and yes, it was in a yoga magazine, and it was a picture of someone doing an asana and saying, you know, after this difficult class, relax with sake. And it was in one of these yoga magazines, and it's like, really? We think that yoga has to be something that's so difficult and so stressful that we need to drink some alcohol afterwards to get over it. So it made me question, like, what are these yoga teachers doing? That the people think that yoga has to be like that. I mean, we want our students to be relaxed. That's why they're coming to yoga. Yes, you can put in some things that can be harder work. You might do some exercise-based movements in there. You might do a little bit of some strenuous vinyasa if you like. But then you'll do other things in the class to allow them to relax and learn how to relax. I mean, that's your role as a teacher. You want to be sharing all of that knowledge. You don't want to just be wearing out your students. It's going to give them a very funny, distorted idea of what real yoga is. So it's really up to you guys. You've got a lot on your shoulders to start sharing what is the real yoga to the world, and to help people and to change the stereotype of, you know, yoga is for the 20-something, fit, flexible person, usually woman. Okay, so we want to change that stereotype so everyone understands that, yes, I can practice yoga too. We want to stop these conversations where, you know, someone asks you what you're doing. You say, I do yoga. And they say, oh, I wish I could do yoga, but I'm not flexible. Right? You must have heard this like so many times. It's not what it's about. We need to, you know, get that out there. So that's your job, to go and share that. So I think we'll finish here. Hari Om.